Hi, we'll start setting up a network interface which can be used across all the VM images. So here I'm using Mac and VMware Fusion. Adding a new network, as you can see. Let's assign a subnet IP. It could be anything. So I'm putting 10.0.0.0. Initially I'm taking it off as DHCP, but will not use DHCP. So here we are allowing it to connect to network through NAT. Now I'm importing the data power image. So for this data power image, a couple of things we have to keep in mind. Once we import it, it needs to have at least 8 gig RAM. This is necessary for the API manager provisioning to work. And the second is that the network interface that we created, we will assign that to the data power. So here we don't need 8 CPUs. We'll customize it to have only one CPU, but we'll keep it as 8 gig RAM. So I'll change the processor cores. Keep it at 8 GB, and the next step is that let's assign to the new network interface that we created. So we will be assigning an IP in the subnet. Now let's boot up this image. Of course, I'm shortcutting the video. Once the data power is booted up, we'll log in as admin and admin. User ID and password as admin initially. The next is that we'll accept the license. We don't need secure mode. We don't need common criteria compatibility mode. We could set a new password. And after that, we can go through the wizard. We could always come back to the wizard. But here, let's say we could configure the ETH0, one of the four Ethernet interfaces. So for this, essentially, we can assign an IP. We'll not go for DHCP. Let's assign an IP 10.0.0.10/24. And for the default gateway, we'll assign 10.0.0.2. And we will again assign for the DNS server 10.0.0.2. We don't need a unique ID. We need remote management, so let's press enter through those steps. We'll accept 22 as the default port, and the web GUI will accept defaults, which is 1990 as a port. We don't need another admin ID. We don't need RAID at this point. Let's review and save this configuration. So now that we have assigned, let's say, the default gateway and the DNS, let's go to the web UI, which is 10.0.0.10 colon 1990. We'll log in with the admin and the password that we created. It will again prompt us for the license. We'll accept the license or click on I agree. It will take some time because the image is going to be rebooted, or the data power is going to be rebooted now. And once the reboot happens, you could log in again to see that everything is in place, or the control panel comes up nicely. And from the command prompt or from the troubleshooting, we should be able to ping the external IP addresses or external host names. For example, let's ping IBM.com. The show interface command would show you the internet IP. Yes, we are able to ping an external URL now. The next is let's put a valid NTP server. It could be any NTP server on the internet. Apply and save that. This is for time synchronization across the images. And after that, we could set the time zone to UTC. We could have set it to any one of the time zones, just that across all the images we need to set it to the same time zone. And API manager would be provisioning to the data power through the XML management interface. And the statistics would be displayed. To display the statistics in API manager, we need to enable the statistics here. That's what we are doing now. And as I said, for provisioning, let's go to the XML management interface and enable the XML management interface or the SOMA interface. Because this is how a domain would be published by the API manager to run the API within data power. So now that we have enabled the XML manager interface, let's to bypass a DNS server, a requirement for DNS server, let's add the host aliases for the API management appliance and the portal or the dev portal. So first we will add the host alias for the data power itself. Let's give it the domain name of dp.demo.ibm and the IP of the data power. We'll add couple more. So let's do management.demo.ibm and assign it, let's say, 10.0.0.11. And for the portal, we will create one more host alias for portal.demo.ibm with an IP of 10.0.0.12. As I said, it could have been any URLs and IPs. It's just that for the IP resolution, we are manually entering host names and IPs in all the images, just to bypass the requirement for a fourth image with DNS. So now that we have set up the data power, let's import the API Manager appliance. So I'm selecting the image 5.0.4. It could be any image, even the latest versions. So for the image, we don't need 8 gig RAM. We could even do with 4 gig RAM. So let's change the setup to use one processor core and 4 GB RAM. And for the network, we will change the network interface to the Ethernet interface we created, which essentially provides, makes sure that all these networks are in the same subnet range. And once the image boots up, we log in as admin, and the password is exclamation R 0 N 1T5 at the rate capital C. So the next is that we set the host name to management. We will set the domain to demo.ibm. So these are the commands from the knowledge center. Then the next thing we do is that we assign a static IP address for the Ethernet 0 interface with the net mask. And we will assign an IP for the gateway, which is going to be 10.0.0.2. And this is the same IP that we will assign for the DNS server as well. And we can disable search for the DNS domains. For the NTP server, let's give a valid NTP server. It could be any NTP server on the internet. As I said, let's disable the search for domains. And to let's say bypass name server lookup, we could add let's say the data powers host name to the /etc/hosts of this image, and the command is net add etc host with the address and the host name. So we will add first for the data power and then for the portal. So for dp.demo.ibm we are entering a host entry, and for portal.demo.ibm we are entering an etc host entry. And after that we will restart the network through a command net restart. We can see that the network IP has taken effect, and then we need to maybe spend some time, let's say, checking the status if all the system components have come up. It would take like 10 minutes typically. So the system show status is the command to see if everything is up. Once it is up, you can try pinging, let's say, the data power with the host name, or ping something like ibm.com to see that you can connect to external network. So that's it. After that, you could go to the browser interface and bring up the Cloud Manager component. So this is the IP/CMC. First time it will prompt us to log in as admin, and the password is uh, exclamation R 0 and 1T5 at the rate capital C. Accept the licenses, and you could give any email. This is the email for admin server. The key thing is that it prompts you to change the password, so you can change it to a password of your convenience now. And once this is changed, the next is to do the provisioning of a domain where all the APIs would run within the gateway server. So here you could see that the management appliance is up, but there is no gateway servers. So we go to the services tab. First we need to configure the data power services. So we could have either given the IP of the data power, or since we can resolve the host name, we can give the host name anyway because it's in the etc host entry as we entered. So we'll put it as dp.demo.ibm and save it here. And we could have created, let's say, multiple gateways. This is where the APIs would run within a domain. But since we have only configured one IP address in the data power, we will put that IP address or the host name for the data power. And if you remember, we enabled the SOMA interface or the XML management interface. So this is the data power's admin and password. We are provisioning essentially the domain now to data power. So the gateway server is up and running now. It takes some time. I've shortcutted the time essentially. And the next is that we need to enter an email server for creating organizations, etc. So I'm using fake SMTP, running it on a particular port as a fake SMTP server. So you need to enter the host and IP, and we need to enter a sender address. So it will prompt us first to test the email configuration. You could give any email because it's a local fake server. And here the test is working, so we can save this email server's configuration. And the next is that once the email server is configured, we could go ahead and create organizations. For example, assuming it's a bank, we will create an organization for cards. Again, we could give any email address. So here I'm doing apiadmin.cards.ibm as the email. So once you create it, an email would go asking you to accept the invitation. So let's bring up the email and click on the link to activate the account. So for the first time, it prompts you to enter a few details. You could select a password of your choice. And once the sign up happens, you log in with the email that you created and the password. And here is the APIs and the products tab. So this is the first part of the video. We'll continue with the installation.